Welcome back to MKE Gadgets. Today we're going to make a fixture for sharpening chisels. But first, a little backstory. With a 3D printer, when you build with a raft, there's a little more cleaning up to do. So at first I tried a putty knife to get underneath there, but just the blade was just a little bit too fat. So then I pulled out my handy maker knife, and that worked pretty good. Blade's a little thinner, but boy, that blade is awful sharp. Next I tried a wood chisel. That worked a lot better for getting underneath the strands and picking them up. It's got a little longer handle, and the important thing is to keep your fingers away. Then I looked at my chisel, and it was kind of dull. So I wanted to make a fixture for sharpening that. So here's a prototype I made out of some bent up aluminum, a couple wing nuts off the rotisserie, and this worked pretty good, except you can see here, when you tighten down the wing nuts, the aluminum bends. So when you bend this bracket, it's hard to control the height of both of the legs to make them even. If one leg is taller, then when you sharpen your chisel, it won't be flat. And here you can see I put a little red Sharpie on there, and here all the Sharpie is removed and here it's not. So that's telling me this chisel's on an angle. So when I slide it on my stone here, I'm not flat. And I thought, well, okay, how do I improve this? I have these ball bearings left over from my belt grinder. And I thought, well, if I put them on the side, that'd make it a little easier to roll. And I looked around. I went through my scrap pile, and my friend Mike gave me a couple pieces of aluminum. He was cleaning out his garage. With this piece of aluminum, it's big enough I can machine a slot out of here that will fit over the stone, drill and tap some holes for some screws to hold the bearings on the side, cut off this piece, and use this as a clamp top. Drill and tap a couple holes here, and I think I'm going to be done. First thing I want to do is go to Bridgeport Mill and machine both of these ends so it's parallel. Then I'll machine a slot so it can go over the stone. First operation, we'll mill both of these ends for cleanup. So I hit them with a black Sharpie. That way it's a little easier to see when you cleaned up 100%. Like most of my projects, I like to make a model in Fusion 360 and then make a drawing. This helps when you come to machining because you have all the sizes, dimensions already laid out for you. So there's no guesswork once you get to the mill. Using a 1/2 inch 2-flute high-speed steel end mill. So all we gotta do is go back and forth till the sharpening line is gone and we're all cleaned up. With the first side done, we'll flip it over and clean up the second side. With both sides cleaned up 100%, we'll set up and mill the slot out. With the same cutter, we're going to remove the material marked with the X so the stone can fit in there. With the slot wide enough for the stone, next we'll set up and drill and tap these ends for the roller bearings. Well, after a trip to the Bridgeport and the bandsaw, I took this piece of stock, did some drilling, tapping, and milling, cut off the flange here, and what I ended up with was two pieces like this. Now off camera, I drilled and tapped these two holes, 1/4 20, and this 5/16 18. And these are 2/4 inch holes, through holes. A trip over to the drill press and some quick engine turning. Now it's time to assemble. On these flathead cap screws, the angle of this chamfer will help center the roller bearing. I'm using a nylon washer here so the bearing doesn't rub on the side of the body and gall it up. Screw that in. And just give it a little snug. And that's rolling really nice. Here's some 1/4 1.5 inch long wing bolts. I put a 1/4 nut in here and I ran it all the way to the top and a washer. And just tighten up that. Insert your chisel and tighten down these 2 wing bolts. You got to tighten them down evenly. You don't want to cock the chisel in the fixture, or you got to start over. Notice how it's cocked sideways. With my mini combination square, I line that the best I can, 90 degrees, and then finish tightening down the wing bolts. And it always moves on you, so you check one more time. And that looks pretty darn good. Now color your blade there. I'm using red because it hides the blood. With the chisel squared and tight in a fixture, now we just rub it back and forth on that angle. This glides really nice because of those roller bearings. And you can see we're cleaning up where the Sharpie was. A little more work. I'm going to add a little light cutting oil on here and bring this to a nice sharp edge. So now I'll have a nice sharp chisel and I can remove the rest of my supports when I do 3D printing. So here's a prototype I made, kind of crude looking, but it worked. Here's a finished product. Started out with a hunk of aluminum that was donated from my friend Mike, and I thank you, Mike. Roller bearings I had left over, bolts I had left over. The wing bolts I had to pick up at the Mega Big Box store this morning. So I want to thank you for watching today's video. Hope you learned something. Please share with friends. Please subscribe if you haven't. Thanks. We'll see you tomorrow.